are in listen-only mode.
I want to thank everybody for joining today. We have Volker and Sean. They're going to be presenting on dynamic blocks, basically how to add intelligence to your blocks. Before we get going, just to get everybody attentive, we have just a couple poll questions that we will launch here. One is, have you ever attended these sessions before in the past? This is going to be an ongoing series. Right now we have about 60% that have said no. That is expanding a little bit. It's almost to 70%. Now let's let this go for a couple more seconds. Okay, and then this last question. And we like to do these questions at the beginning of the Hangouts just so that we get an idea of what everyone's expecting for the people who have actually joined live. This way we can try to tune how we present our material for you. So now this is a question on what do you hope to really gain from this session. Maybe you're just killing some time or eating your lunch, listening to us talk, just looking for tips and tricks, whatever you might be looking for. Okay, so for the most part, people have responded, I'm hoping to pick up tips and tricks for defining blocks, so that's great. Okay, Volker, at this point, I'll let you take it away.
For those of you who have come back after our previous sessions, I'm hoping everybody can hear me well. Royce or Sean?
Yep, yeah, I hear you just fine.
All right, great, thank you. All righty then. So this session is about dynamic blocks. In my previous session, I demonstrated how, well, basically the basics of creating blocks. Well, in 2006, dynamic blocks were introduced in AutoCAD 2006, and this allowed us to get a lot more flexibility out of our blocks. We could be a lot more interactive as to how we use those blocks, so we can assign actions to those blocks. Basically, make them very flexible, much more so than static blocks. In addition, instead of having the hundreds of different blocks you may have, or 10 blocks for one particular symbol, we could now combine all those into one block by giving this flexibility to our dynamic blocks. In AutoCAD 2006, in order to create these dynamic blocks, they introduced a new block authoring environment. This allows us to modify an existing block by adding dynamic features or flexibility to it, or we could actually just author a block using the block editing environment, or even starting off with the block command and then going into the block editing environment. I've only got a couple of more PowerPoints, and we'll get down to the meat and potatoes of all this. So first of all, just to talk about the block editor. Again, it's an environment within AutoCAD. It looks like you're in AutoCAD, except the tools have changed. And again, we can author new or existing blocks. One of the nice things about the block editor is that it allows me to easily redefine a block, to update it. And this doesn't have to be a dynamic block. It can just be a regular AutoCAD block. Also, we have a command in there called bat order, only available from the command line, but it allows me to easily reorder my attributes in a block. In addition, we have a command in there called bsave as. And this is such a cool feature because it allows me to save a particular block to a new name so that I can modify it to look like something else or a little different without affecting the original and then having the original update throughout the drawing. So these are some tools you'll only find in the block editor. Additionally, a new tool palette was introduced, and this is the block authoring palette. I will cover the palettes on that authoring palette as we take a look at the block authoring environment. But bottom line is there are 4 of them: parameters, actions, parameter sets, and constraints. The final slide here, just to give you an idea of what you'll be seeing as far as some of the grips associated with blocks. I won't get into true detail about all of these, but the different grip types are associated with different actions and parameters that have been assigned to a dynamic block. So you have your standard grip, which is basically you pick it to move a block, and that can also be applied to parameters. You have a linear grip, which allows me to move in a predefined direction, a rotation grip, a flip grip, basically a mirror grip, and an alignment grip. This is a very cool grip to allow you to align with a specific object. And we can also create what are called lookup tables. And these are just basically pull-down menus for a particular block. And you'll see all this in an example. I'm not going to cover every one of these actions and parameters. We'd spend a week doing that. But I will show a couple of examples which will give you a good glossy overview of how to create the dynamic block, how to assign a parameter, apply an action to that parameter, and make it all work. We'll also cover chaining, which is where we have one action force another entity to do something else. You'll see what I mean when we get into the block editor. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and close this PowerPoint slide down. And here we are in AutoCAD. So you're probably very familiar with this particular palette. It's the tool palette. And AutoCAD has several dynamic blocks available as a sample. I'll discuss this palette after my initial demo of how to create blocks. But what I wanted to show you right away is that you can easily tell which is a dynamic block just because it puts this little lightning bolt symbol next to that block. So if you see it in a palette or in the insert command or anywhere else next to a block, that shows it's dynamic, as opposed to the static blocks, which do not have that symbology. All right, so I'm going to go right into a little tutorial on a block, and we will cover the block authoring tools and how to create this dynamic block. So first of all, let's just begin on the Home tab here where we have our block tools. And you'll see that right here is where we can get to the block editor. We can also get to the block editor right from the block command, the make block command, which has an option to open up a block the block editor as we create it, as we finish creating the block itself. On the Insert tab, you will also see the block editor as a singular icon here. Now, just selecting this right here, it prompts me to edit a block definition. The cool thing about this block editor is that I can select any block in my drawing and either modify it if it's already dynamic, such as this one, and there's that little symbol, or create a dynamic block out of it if it is not already, if it's just static. Or if I want, I can not select anything and just create a new block by giving it a name right here and then clicking OK. I'm just going to cancel out of this. Wanted to show you that dialog. We'll get back to it, I'm sure, a little later. I'm going to cancel. And what I have right here is a dynamic block on top and then a static block right here. And these are just a plate symbol. Now, the idea with this plate symbol is that you need the flexibility, or you may have multiple blocks which show the symbol in a different manner. So I may have it elongated and have the circle arrayed at an increment. In the past, we'd need several blocks to do this. But because this block is dynamic, and I'm going to go ahead and select it, it has the insertion grip here, but it also has another grip. This is for a linear function. And notice as soon as I select it, that there are little hash marks that appear to the right of that. These are the increments to which I've defined this block. So basically, it is allowing me to array and expand this block a specific distance, a distance which I have defined within the drawing itself, or within the block itself. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to show you. One way is to take an existing block. Now, I could have spent some time drawing this for you, but I think we all know how to draw. I'm going to go ahead and just double click. Well, actually, before I do that, I actually meant to right click first and show you that we have tools here for the block editor. So if I select this, it's going to open up my block in the block editor. I've canceled. I'm going to select the dynamic block again. And this is a nice little feature, this reset block. It just brings it back to its original look. Getting back to my static block here, I'm going to double click on it. And my edit block definition command dialog pops up, the same as I clicked up here for block editor. I can also type BE at the command line, all right, or BEdit, but it's just as easy to double click. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, go ahead and select the test block I have here, and let's open it up in the block editor. So in this environment, you're going to see the new authoring palette, and we'll get back to that in a moment. Here you can open a different block in order to modify it. This is the bsave command, which saves whatever changes I've made here. This is the save block as command. And I like this because I really maybe do not want to modify this test block for whatever reason. I have no good reason right now. I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to go ahead and save this as plate 2. And I'll click OK. And now we have a new block name assigned to this. In the block editor, my block is no longer a block. It's individual line work. Okay, so this is, we're in a drawing environment. It's as if we had exploded this block. The test block was not available in previous versions of AutoCAD, or I should say when AutoCAD first introduced the block editor. I think it was introduced in 2010. So in the past, in order to test how my block works, I would have to get out of the block editor using the close block editor command, save the changes, and then test the block. If it didn't work, I'd have to come back in here. Now I can test it in this environment. Constraints are not available in AutoCAD LT, okay? Only in AutoCAD, and they were introduced in AutoCAD 2010 to the block editor as well. We can choose our palette items that are here from the ribbon. Just as easy to use it off of the palette. We also have our visibility states function here. Getting to this palette here, parameters. What are parameters? Parameters basically define the features of the geometry of the objects that I want to change. So if I want something to stretch to the right or left, I would have to use a linear parameter. Once I've done that, though, I need to apply an action or assign an action to that parameter. So in this case, stretch. And we'll be using this in an example. So parameters, you're telling AutoCAD what you want to do with the block, and the actions allow me to make it happen. Parameter sets are a combination of the parameters and the actions put into one function. This is something I'd encourage you first to work with parameters and actions, then work with the sets. And again, we can apply constraints as well, but AutoCAD LT does not have this, so just be aware of that. So in order to create the block we saw, I need to first add a parameter. In this case, I'm going to choose a linear parameter. And basically, this is like drawing a dimension, a linear dimension on my block. It looks pretty much the same. I pick 2 points, drag and drop this where I want the location, and it looks like a dimension. There's a little X here. That indicates that it is the starting point. A plus sign on this grip indicates it's the second point. The exclamation mark indicates that I have not yet assigned an action to it. Now, as I said, this particular block, when I stretch it, it stretches a particular distance, and it arrays the circle with an increment of a half unit in between it and the next circle. So what I'm going to do is select this parameter here, and the first thing I'm going to do is, because I don't know how many of these parameter labels I'm going to have, I want to know what this is for, so I'm going to go ahead and just say length of block in the, or plate, maybe I should have said plate. It doesn't really matter at this stage. But basically, it allows me to let people know what this is supposed to do. I'm going to go ahead then, because I want to assign a incremental distance when I stretch this later. I need to go in here where I can assign a distance type. We have an increment or a list. A list will give you a drop-down list. The increment places those little hash marks you saw when I showed the example of the block. I also need to tell it the distance increment. Well, I want 2.5 units, basically from here, this quadrant, the left quadrant, to about here of the new circle's left quadrant. So that's 2.5 units. So I'm just going to type that in there. Whoops. I'll hit enter, and I'll tell it a minimum distance of 2 and a maximum distance of 20. Of course, you can play with whatever values for your own block and add whatever increments you need. So anyway, we've added that, and I'm going to hit escape now to let go of this parameter. And what I need to do now is tell AutoCAD I'd like this to move as well, although I'll be applying an array action to it later. So again, I'm going to select linear. I'll pick the quadrant. In this case, because I want this to move a distance of 2.5 unit increments, I'm also going to place a gap between the array. Like I said, that circle is going to be arrayed, and so I want a distance between it and the next circle. So for my second point, I'm just going to type 2.5 and let direct distance entry place the second point of this parameter. And again, looks pretty much like this first one we did. right, I've assigned my linear parameters, telling it I just want it to go horizontal. I'm going to now assign an action. What's going to happen here is that we're applying an action to the top label, the length of block, and then we're going to chain this parameter to the length of block, so that whatever I do to the block is going to affect this. In this case, it's going to stretch the block and then move the circle or array it. To do this, go ahead and make sure I'm out of a command, and I'm going to go into the stretch command. And the reason I chose the stretch command for this example is because there's an action here that's going to be a little confusing to some people. It was to me at first, but we'll get to that in a moment here. I'm going to select the parameter, and note the command line. It says specify parameter point to associate with the action or a second point. Well, basically it's saying, hey, where do you want the stretch point to be, the grip that you will be using to stretch the object. So I'm going to pick right here. And then it's telling me, all right, specify the first corner of the stretch frame. Okay, now this is different than selecting objects, but it's going to look the same, and this is what kind of confuses people at times. I'm just going to pick a point here and create a stretch frame like this. And basically I'm telling it that this is the area I'm assigning to this parameter. I want it to affect this stretch. Once I've done that, place the stretch frame, and be sure to encompass both parameters here, okay? Once I've done this, though, it tells me, okay, now select your objects. Initially, you're probably thinking, well, I just selected. Well, no, you didn't. Now we're selecting. And I'm just going to go ahead and do something like this. And remember, this stretch command, anything with the crossing window, it's going to select it. But unlike the stretch command in AutoCAD, actually, forget that part. I am going to hold down on my Shift key right now and remove the circle, because I don't want it to move, which the stretch command will do. Okay, I want it to remain static because it has its own parameter, and we're going to add a chain to the length of block parameter. So having selected my objects, I hit enter, and then I'm going to go ahead first of all and select this, and I'm going to turn off one of the grips. I just want the second grip here to be showing. That's the second point. I'll hit escape. I'll select this array parameter here, and I'm going to tell it, yes, I want to chain actions, and I don't want any grips on this because I don't want the user to modify the circle by itself. So they're not going to be able to select it. Now that I've done that, there's one piece missing, and that is the array for the circle here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the array action, and it tells me to select my parameter, which is the distance parameter here, or I should have called that array or something, length of array. And then it tells me to select the objects that I want to array. So I've done that. I'm now going to go ahead and select test. Oops, not done yet. And this little warning right here tells me that, this little asterisk or exclamation mark. On the command line, it prompts me for an increment value for that distance between the array columns. So I'm going to type in 2.5. And now that exclamation mark is gone. Now again, I don't need to leave the block editor in order to ensure that this works. Just by clicking test block, it brings me into another environment. And there's my grip, this is that just your insertion point grip basically, and then we have our array. So pretty cool, huh? That is, let's go ahead and close the test block, and we're going to go ahead and close the block editor. It now prompts me to save the changes to plate 2. And of course that has not been inserted. I'll just go I typed I for insert at the command line. Plate 2. I'm going to specify on screen. And there it is. So we have about a minute on this before I go to my next example. Any questions, comments? Sean or Royce, do you see anything in the chat window there?
There's no current questions in the chat window, but that was a good example.
Great.
You know, hopefully folks you start to think about how you can use this in your own environments, right? You may have different types of block. You maybe have, like for doors, for instance, you may have 20 different door blocks that you use, and potentially those can all be put into one. So you just have one block, and then depending on what you need, you're choosing the size in there. So, you know, great example there, Volker. Great execution, and you know, hopefully it's, you know, this block may not be for everybody, but hopefully it gave an idea of how you can maybe start to save time with your own block libraries.
Yeah, it's thank you, Sean. Yeah, it is simplistic, okay, but it is it showed you a 2 different types of parameters. It showed 2 different types of actions, stretch and array, plus a function called chaining. So you can get so in depth with these blocks. I have one finally. Go ahead.
Sorry, we did get one comment that somebody missed the procedure of how you did the chaining, so I don't know if you're going to show that again in your next block as well.
I am not going to, but just
okay.
basically,
go over that real quick again.
This will just take a second. So if I go in here and having selected, I've selected a stretch action around the entire, well, from here to here. Once I selected the stretch action, this is the object I want to chain to this. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is select this parameter, and I've gone in here and changed chain actions from no to yes. And because there are no grips on this, it's part of the makeup of the overall block. It's tied into this block now. There's a lot to chaining actions. I've seen blocks where there have been chains within chains within chains. They can be very complex. Again, this is simplistic. Definitely something to experiment with. So, but I do need to move on to the last example I have. I hope that answered it. If not, we will be showing the link to the forum. This would be the same place where you registered initially. You could leave a post there, and I could maybe add on to this and give a better explanation if that wasn't good enough. So, last example here, so we don't run out of time for some additional Q&A. This is probably the most simplistic, I feel, of dynamic blocks right here. You know, how many times have you had 4 or 5 symbols that are used within a drawing, and you don't really need to modify those, but maybe you need something else used instead. So instead of a single station smoke detector, I need to use my system smoke detector or system heat detector, or maybe some other fire or communication symbol in this case. Well, why not, instead of managing multiple blocks, manage one? And that's what this is. This is a block that has been assigned a visibility state. Oops. Let's go ahead and pick. And this is what's called a lookup table, okay? Or it's just basically a menu. And check this out. So I switched that from a single station smoke detector to a system smoke detector. Let's just go right to the manual pull station so we can see a unique difference. All right, so I'm going to show you how to create this one. I actually really love working with the visibility states. So what I'm going to do is create a block from scratch. And it's going to end up looking like the one we're seeing there. But what I'm going to do is just type in here a new name. We'll call this, just for grins because I'm not very original, Syscom2. And I'm going to click OK. And basically it opens up a blank palette in AutoCAD. Now, one thing I didn't mention previously is that for the most part, any parameter you apply has to have an action in order to make that parameter do something. There are really only two parameters that I can think of off the bat that do not need an action applied to them. One is the alignment parameter, and the other one is the one we're going to work with right now, the visibility parameter. It does not need an action applied to it. Now, note up here we have the visibility ribbon panel. It's actually separated or segregated from the rest of them, and there's a reason for that, because we work with this visibility states manager over here. So what I'm going to do now is just plop a visibility parameter in my drawing. And we'll just leave it visibility 1, but we could, again, assign it a unique name. Note that now that I've done that, everything here is available to me. These controls allow me to make the objects visible or invisible within a state. That's these two right here, make visible and make invisible. This control allows me to see all objects in different visibility states. Now think of visibility states as something like a layer, where you add a symbol, turn off that layer, add another layer, add a symbol, turn off that layer, and whenever you want to see that object, you would turn on or off other layers. Visibility States Manager allows me to add visibility states to the drawing. So right now I have a visibility state 0. This is basically like anything in AutoCAD where you have a default layer name or standard text style or dimension style. There has to be one visibility state. I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to go ahead and call it Manual Pull Station, just for grins. And also because that's what the block is called. All right, so we've done that. We're going to go ahead and click OK here. And by the way, I could create all my visibility states right now in here and reorganize them. But I'm going to do this one step at a time. I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to go ahead and use the insert command to insert one of my blocks. Now the thing, and I typed I enter for those who don't use the command line. And I have these blocks in the drawing. So I'm going to go ahead, and obviously I could insert from the hard drive as well, or the network. And manual pull station is what I selected. Now the important, it's not, well, it is important. I like to put importance on things. The thing to keep in mind here is that we are creating one block. And if I were just to insert a block into a visibility state as a block, I would after a while have numerous nested blocks, which it'll still work, but why have all those extra blocks in your drawing? So instead, I'm going to make sure to explode the block as I insert it, and I'm going to use 0, 0 so that the base point will be the center of the block. I'm going to click OK. And it looks like I put the visibility state a little too far over here, so I'm just going to move that over to the side a little. All right, so that's my manual pull station visibility. And right now I could make it invisible, but what I'm going to do instead is create another visibility state. And I'll call this System Heat Detector. All right, notice here, leave visibility of existing objects unchanged in this new state. That would mean that this pull station would appear as well as the system heat detector. I don't want that. I don't want to show all objects in a new state either. This is my preference. Hide all existing objects in new state. So once I click OK and click OK here, the manual pull station disappeared, and now I can insert my system heat detector. Again, I'll use the defaults. And I'm just going to repeat that. And notice the default now is hide all existing objects. So I'll do system smoke detector. Click OK. Click OK. I for insert. Smoke detector, there we go. Click OK. And finally, we'll go ahead and create the single station smoke detector. And we're going to click OK. I for insert. And we will click OK. All right, so a couple things here. I could now make this invisible. I don't want that. I did that all in that dialog where it said, hey, do you want to keep them showing or not? But what I can do, if I want to just kind of see how things overlay, I can use this visibility mode. And it shows me the highlighted one, the very dark one, is the top symbol, and then it shows me how the rest are layered underneath. So it does allow me to see, is everything in the right area to have a common base point. So a good way to check all your all of your visibility or location for the objects. Let's go ahead and test this. And I'm going to go ahead and select that, and there's my little drop down here. And I can easily switch back between these. Pretty cool, huh? Except it's not quite the way we had it in the original drawing. In the original drawing, this here is actually the top block, okay, the default block when I insert it. So what I can do is I'm going to close this test block and, whoops, I closed the whole thing, didn't I? I'm going to go back into the block, to the visibility drawing. There we go, close block. We're back in the block editor. And what I'm going to do is just go to the visibility states manager here, and I'm going to reorder these. So I want this to actually be on top, and this to be second, and then this to be third in line. Click OK. Test the block, and there it is, just the way I want it to be, just like the original. I'm going to go ahead and close the block editor now. And we have visibility states that we covered here, as well as our plate. The one thing about the visibility state, one last thing to add, is we have ways of extracting data from our drawings using the Enhanced Attribute Manager. We also have tools that allow us to count blocks, okay? And the nice thing about visibility is if, say, I have, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's say I have this block here. I'm going to go ahead and insert it, and we'll go ahead and select Syscom, which is the same one. Oops, I exploded it. That's the one thing we got to be careful with. I'm going to uncheck explode, and I want to specify on screen. It's actually placed a copy of that at 0, 0, exploded. Awkward. Anyway, we'll click OK, and there's my block, and there's my block. So if I were to do a block count or a block data extraction, it would tell me now that I have one of the single station smoke detector and one of the manual pull station. It differentiates between the top, whatever the name of the top layered block is at the time.
We do have a question, Volker, just while you're on this subject.
And actually, I am done, so great.
Okay.
Good timing.
The question was, can I use attribute instead of text in visibility dynamic block example?
Yes, you can. And actually, I will answer it in more detail right now, but my next webinar is on attributes, and one of the things I'll be talking about is how to use attributes within not just static blocks, but dynamic blocks as well. The key is that you would need a unique visibility, or excuse me, tag for your attributes for the different states. Okay, so it does require a little bit more work, but as long as your tags are unique, it'll work. And also, if you have like flip states or say a rotation state, you want to make sure that the attribute itself is not locked. If you lock it and say you flip and a symbol, then the attribute actually stays where the original block was inserted, but the block itself will flip. So there are some things you have to keep in mind, but it can be done. It has been done, and I've seen it work very well, as long as you're using, doing it properly. So hopefully that answers it right now. Again, I'll be doing an entire webinar on attributes.
And then the only other comment was actually a suggestion, and I noted that you and I would discuss this after the meeting, but there was a suggestion to use a black background instead of white, but I wasn't sure. I thought there were some reasons why you were using white. So
actually, I'm very I'm very happy to hear that comment. I tried white this time because of all my previous ones have been done with a black background. I wasn't quite sure where I was getting better results. To me, the black background in the follow-up recordings that I viewed, they looked okay. I was hoping to experiment with this white background. We will definitely discuss this, and I do appreciate that type of input.
Okay, very good. And those are all the comments and questions at this time.
Okay, well, I'm going to just quickly go to just my last PowerPoint here, because I do want to thank you for taking time out of your day and joining us. We are open to suggestions as to topics that you'd like to hear more about. I do have the next two scheduled, as you may have noticed when you registered. And we are trying to keep this at the AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT level for the time being. But feel free to post your comments, any additional follow-up questions you may have in the forum where you signed up. The link that you see on the screen right now would take you directly to that. I'm pretty sure you can't click it, so I'm going to leave it up, and I tried to shorten it to where you could write it down or something. But Sean and I, and actually the whole product support crew, thanks you for taking your time out of your busy day, and hopefully this has been helpful.
We do have one final poll question too, just before we have everybody jump off. We might want to put that up.
Yeah, let's do that. So basically this poll, I believe, is asking if the session was helpful.
And so far, everyone is responding yes.
I am so happy to hear that. So, yeah, please join us for our next session. It'll be the same time next week, and covering attributes, and you can register in the same forum where you registered for this one. Sean, Royce, and myself, and our entire crew, we really thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you next week.
Bye, everyone.